All right, it is 7 p.m. EST now, so I think we're good to get going. Hello, everyone. My name is Namira, and I'm your host today. I'm from Ontario, Canada, and a proud member of First Robotics Team 7480, the Machine Mavericks. I'm also on the First Canada Youth Council, as well as the First Robotics Headquarters Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Youth Advisory Council. After high school, I'm looking to go into either engineering or pre-medicine at either Yale or Harvard, for which I'm really excited. Welcome to tonight's first career webinar, From Robotics to Healthcare with Johnson & Johnson. We'll be talking today with first mentors and alumni from Johnson & Johnson as they share how the skills you've developed and honed as part of FIRST are applicable to the type of work they do every single day. Incredible work, from designing surgical robotics to developing life-saving medication. They'll share some of what they've learned along their path so far, from resume tips to life at a global corporation to why the work that they do is so important. In just a moment, our panelists will introduce themselves and share a bit about their current role, career, education pathway, and first experience. And then I have a few questions for the panel that I'd like to start off with. While folks are introducing themselves, start thinking of questions yourself. You can submit those at any time during the live webinar by clicking on the question mark icon. We'll be compiling these throughout the beginning of the show and answering the top questions live at the end. Now, I'm very excited to get started with our intros. And I see that Sarah, you're at the top of the screen, so why don't you get us started?
Thank you. My name is Sarah Asio. I currently work as a data science lead for Johnson & Johnson. And in my role as a data science lead, I work on different types of business-related problems and see how to use the data the organization collects every day in order to help them make better decisions and be able to better serve their patients and customers. One of the more exciting projects that I've worked on that is related to robotics is one in which we're trying to see how we can do some research and development to automate some of the surgical processes that happen within some of the procedures in order to encourage physicians to obtain outcomes that are similar across all patients and help patients get the best outcomes possible whenever they go in for surgery. And my career path to get here where I am, I got a PhD in industrial engineering and started off with a career in research and academics. And after that, made a transition into industry, and it's been very exciting so far. Thank you.
Wow, that sounds like a very interesting project indeed, and great to hear about your background, Sarah. Next on my screen is Mason, so why don't we go to you? I think you're just muted there, Mason.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, sorry about that. Hey everyone, my name is Mason Marquis. I'm an alumni of FRC Team 118, the Robotics. My current role with J&J, I'm the Director of Mechanical Engineering for our Robotics and Digital Solutions. And I'm working on capital hardware, including robots that are going to be used to help improve patient outcomes. And we're located out in the San Francisco Bay Area. Prior to my role here, my career path, I actually started my career at the NASA Johnson Space Center, where I was doing research and development robotics and mentoring first teams as well. And then, took a small journey and ended up out here. Thanks for having me today.
Awesome, great, Mason. It's so wonderful to have you. Next on my screen is Deb.
Hi, thank you. My name is Deborah Berrien, and I am Senior Director of Learning Management Systems here at Johnson & Johnson. So I'm in technology. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Psychology with a business minor, and then I also have my MBA in Business Management with a concentration in Business Process Reengineering. I started my career in human resources, but then I got into human resources technology, starting in data security, then software engineering, then project and program management. So you'll notice I do not have a degree in computer science, so everything I learned, I actually learned at work. So, and I am not an alumni of FIRST Robotics, but I am a mentor of Redbird Robotics, Team 1807 out of Allentown, New Jersey. And I'm the proud mom of a son who is alumni of FIRST. So I got to see firsthand how he's grown, and he is now pursuing a degree in mechanical engineering.
Wow, we're only halfway through the intros and I'm already so excited. Why don't we go to Tina next, if you wouldn't mind?
Great, yes, thank you. So yeah, a quick intro on me. My name is Tina Jacobs. I'm currently a lead analyst for the analytics and innovation team supporting our Deliver supply chain organization. Similar to Deb there, my career path and educational background was definitely not linear. I actually started studying finance and accounting in school, and that led me to join J&J about almost 7 years ago, directly into our finance organization. So my first couple of roles were entirely finance focused, auditing focused, and really my last role within finance, I started to get involved more in the digital space, and learning more how data and technology can help kind of change the way we work, change the way we think about work. So I really got a huge interest in that space and wanted to explore further and kind of lean into that space. So that brought me to the team I'm on now. So supporting the Deliver supply chain organization. So if you think about J&J's end-to-end supply chain, Deliver is really that last point. So all about how we get our products out to our end customers through distribution, technology, or transportation and customer service and capabilities. So my role specifically supports those business function, specifically for our pharmaceutical sector. So again, helping to enable data access, developing analytics capabilities, process automation, and all things like that to better serve our customers. I'm also not a first alumni, but I heard about the first program through my involvement in J&J's We STEM 2D program. So it's our Women in STEM program. So all about supporting, and I specifically support the youth pillar there. So helping young people from very young ages all the way to pre-college, basically raise awareness about the STEM fields, kind of inspire them to learn more and the importance there. So great to kind of hear first, and the mission there being kind of synced up with my passion there. So thanks.
That's awesome, Tina. We should have you as a first mentor soon. Now, next I'll go to Becca to end us off with introductions.
Hey everybody, I'm Becca Doyle. I'm a proud alum of Team 75, the Robo Raiders from Hillsborough, New Jersey. I'm an HR leader, a human resources leader supporting our pharmaceutical supply chain. I've been with J&J for almost 13 years, and similar to some of the other folks on the call, educationally and career-wise, I've been a little bit all over the place. In undergrad, I was a pre-med English major. I got my MBA a few years after I graduated. And then within J&J, I started out as an intern in the R&D engineering group based in consumer. Then I spent about a decade or so working in quality and compliance, both out of corporate and in one of our medical device manufacturing sites before transitioning to the HR function where I'm sitting now.
Wow, what a diverse and incredible panel we have today. I feel like I already have a million questions in mind, but I do know that the name of this webinar is From Robotics to Healthcare. So I would like to start there. But first, I think it'd be helpful for our attendees to understand a bit more about Johnson & Johnson overall. Maybe I could go to Deb, if you wouldn't mind, to just share a little bit about the work that J&J does.
Great, thanks. So J&J is actually the largest healthcare company in the world. And our mission is to change the trajectory of healthcare around the globe. That's a really big mission that we have, but we are powered by over 140,000 employees in 275 operating companies in over 65 countries. We have multiple segments. So we have our medical device segment. Medical devices, so if you get a knee replacement, a hip replacement, we're building those devices. What's really cool is right now we even have the ability to 3D print devices to customize to our patients. We also have our vision division, so AccuView lenses, for example, our LASIK surgery. We have our consumer segment, and I'm sure that everybody knows some of our products at least. So we have iconic brands such as Band-Aid, as well as Tylenol, and also, of course, our baby products. So everybody knows that yellow shampoo, no more tears. We also have Neutrogena, we have Aveeno, Listerine, etc. And I'm sure that if you all go into your cabinets today, you will find multiple J&J consumer products in your household. Last but not least, we have our pharmaceutical division. So we're making life-saving drugs. And as you all know, we also make vaccines. So that's a little bit about what we do, but I'd be remiss in talking about Johnson & Johnson and what we do and not talk about why we do what we do. And everything we do is grounded in what we call our credo. So the credo is more than just a mission statement for us. It's really grounds everything that we do here at Johnson & Johnson. So basically, in a nutshell, what our credo is saying that we have responsibilities to our customers, the doctors, the nurses, the mothers, the fathers, the patients that use our products, to make sure that they're of the highest quality, that they're effective, and that they're accessible. Our next responsibility is to our employees. So if you ever want to work for our company, we want to make sure that we have diversity, inclusion, equity, and we also have work-life balance in what we do. Our third responsibility is to the areas that we work in, so our environments. So we're environmentally conscious, and we also do a lot of work around philanthropic charity type of work. If you see that we have, if you ever see that there's a natural disaster, for example, J&J not only sends our products, we donate products, but our doctors and nurses, scientists, our workers donate their times too. So a lot of times we're out there helping our communities, which as an employee, I'm just so incredibly proud of. And then last but not least, we have a responsibility to our stakeholders. So that's basically in a nutshell what we do, the what and the why.
That is a really big nutshell. Thank you, Deb. That's so wonderful. And I really appreciate you providing this context for me and for all of our attendees today, who are all first participants looking to work one day at a company like Johnson & Johnson. And I think that would be a dream come true for many of them. So speaking of dreams come true, I would like to go to Mason next, who I think is living the dream for a lot of us first students here. And I'd just like to ask you, Mason, how does your role in robotic solutions relate back to the healthcare side of J&J?
Yeah, as Deb mentioned, J&J has been involved in surgery for a long time, building tools, but our department and organization is relatively new, when you look at the long history that J&J has, and we're trying to bring robotics to the forefront of surgery. So in some cases, that's building systems like our Monarch platform, which takes a manual procedure like a bronchoscopy and coming up with a robotic solution for that, which allows physicians to go deeper into the lung with more control, which really helps with early diagnosis of lung cancer. In other areas, we're trying to build next generation robots that we can put in the operating room that will help ultimately give surgeons more power to help patients recover faster and have less invasive surgeries. So to me, it is a really direct tie-in to healthcare. I mean, we are dealing directly with patient outcomes, but ultimately it's innovative. We're trying to push the limits of what can be done with technology. So for a lot of people who work with me, it's they like building really cool things. They like being on the forefront of technology, but they also get the added benefit of everything they're creating is going to help people one day. And that's really makes it for a fulfilling job out here.
That's amazing. And when you're describing your colleagues and what the nature of your work is, I feel like that resonates really well with what first students are doing right now and what we want to do in the future as well. So thank you so much, Mason. Now I'd like to ask sort of the opposite question to Becca, Tina, and Sarah in that order. What about your roles in healthcare, and how does your work benefit from advancements in STEM, specifically in robotics? And first I'll go to Becca.
Yeah, so when you think about HR, I don't think people think about technology and kind of being on the cutting edge of technology, but similarly to a lot of departments across J&J, HR is capitalizing on intelligent automation, really utilizing that to streamline our processes from across the full spectrum of HR functions. And that enables us to kind of spend more time on the most impactful and strategic work that we do, like improving the employee experience, helping prepare the business for future needs and technology of the future.
That's awesome. And Tina?
Yeah, so coming from the supply chain side, definitely advancements in science and technology is huge. We hear kind of all the time how we're moving towards a touchless supply chain or a digital supply chain, and how important that is. And J&J in general is investing a ton in innovation in these areas. As Deb was mentioning, kind of in our credo, our first responsibility being to our customers, we ultimately want to serve them in the best way we can with the highest levels of service. So in supply chain, one example I would want to provide is pre-pandemic. I had the opportunity to visit one of our manufacturing plants and distribution sites for our vision care segment, so who produces contact lenses. And seeing the process there, and a nod to the robotics, it was almost 100% no touch, no manual intervention, really amazing what they've done in terms of automation, all the way from the production side to picking and packing at the distribution centers, and really getting us to a place where we can very quickly, very efficiently get our product out to our customers. And that also then kind of in this space frees up the time for the humans to focus on different problems, more complex problems. So we're able, again, in that way to return more value. So really in supply chain, a lot about that intelligent automation and ways that we can continue to kind of drive that customer pull focus. So that would be my area.
Sounds like an incredible experience. And how about Sarah next?
So from the data science perspective, we have so many opportunities across Johnson & Johnson, and I specifically work in the medical devices sector. And among the several things that I've been able to do as a data scientist is work on building platforms that automate most processes, just as Tina mentioned, helping the organization to take a whole lot of data that they have within their records and trying to make sense of that data and provide insights to our business partners, to people working in different functions, so that they have the same source of truth in making their decisions for business projection, for pricing, for whatever business function it is. Could be sales, it could be identifying new markets, just being able to get all that data together and apply the tools that are at my disposal as a data scientist and make sense of it, and then unlock value for the organization so that the organization is able to remain competitive within the field, as there's so many competitors out there, and is able to continue to deliver on their promise to the patients and the world and the people that we serve. And one particular project that I want to talk about is one in which we now have the ability to look at patients' biometric information and be able to predict or determine the kind of implant that they're going to need for surgery. So if someone is coming in for a knee replacement, a hip replacement, with the kind of programming and computing capabilities that we have, we're now able to take all that data and train multiple models on it until we have models that are able to predict what kind of implant that person would need, and it helps to streamline the entire supply chain from manufacturing to warehousing to the salesperson, and you find that we're able to get the right implant to the right patient at the right time, and just make sure that we're getting the best outcomes for everyone. And there are several other examples, but it's really exciting to see how big data, automation, and artificial intelligence and the different methods that have been innovated are enabling us as data scientists to empower our business partners to make decisions that traditionally would have taken longer or wouldn't be made as accurately. Since now it's just at a click of a button, you're able to get insights and just make decisions that are good for the business and for the patient.
Wow, how extraordinary. I mean, I feel as though I've always grown up thinking and hearing about how robotics is applicable to any really field in the world, but we're seeing it right here with HR, with supply chain work, with data science. And I think that's just so incredible for all of our first students and alumni watching today. And I'd actually like to go to our first alumni, Mason and Becca, next to ask you a question about what advice that you would give for any first alumni who are here today who are looking to break into the corporate world. I'll go to Mason first.
Sure. You know, I feel like whenever I was first, applying for my first jobs out of college, which were actually, internships and co-ops, I leveraged a lot of the skills that I developed in FIRST Robotics to try to bolster up my resume and really, impress the hiring managers. And now that I'm on the other side of that equation, I'm a hiring manager, so I review a lot of resumes, I talk to a lot of candidates. I find that what you do in FIRST Robotics is extremely relevant to what we do in the real world, especially when it comes to engineering. I mean, you are learning how to solve problems, you are learning how to deal with technology, you're learning how to push things forward. That's all extremely relevant. So my advice would be to leverage the skills you've learned and really try to show those off. Think back to, you might think, oh, I'm just having fun, just building robots with my friends or going to competitions. But in a lot of ways, you're learning how to problem solve. You're learning how mechanical or electrical systems work. You're learning how to program. You should bring those examples forward, because I guarantee you many of the people who are the hiring managers are going to be extremely impressed and blown away by that kind of that skills prior to even getting any real work experience.
That's awesome. And it's so inspiring to hear you, Mason, as you're saying, to be on the other side of the equation here, telling us all that these skills that we're gaining right now are really applicable and they're sought out after by the industry. So that's wonderful. How about you, Becca? What advice would you give to first alumni and first students watching today?
Yeah, I would echo everything Mason just said, but also adding, never underestimate the power of networking. So my first job I mentioned within J&J was as a college intern in the R&D engineering group. And I was actually hired for that job by the lead mentor of my first team from high school. And in pretty much every job change I've had since, the relationships that I've built throughout my career have played a hugely important role. And what's great about FIRST is you're working alongside mentors and student colleagues, potentially for years at a clip, and they not only get to know you as a person, but they can also see you in action in kind of a work setting and get a really good understanding of what you're capable of delivering in the workplace. So, that said, with so much of finding a job being about relationships you've cultivated, you never know who from your network might be able to connect you with an opportunity.
That's great advice. Thank you, Becca. And so inspiring again today for us to be, for me to be hosting a panel, but for all of our attendees here to be watching this panel with such extraordinary people who we might be in just a few years. And so I have a question for students who are applying to jobs right now or might be in the near future. What do you think are some things that you look for on a resume? Or do you have any suggestions specifically on ways to help first alumni really stand out from the crowd? I'll go to Deb first and then to Becca.
So really, to build upon what Mason was saying, it's amazing what you do in FIRST Robotics. You have 6 weeks from the time that you learn what the game is. So that's basically what your outcomes you're trying to drive to and your requirements. And then you have all those different groups, the electrical, the build team, the design team, the programming team, and your business team. So what it is, it's important to call out. If you're working on machines, what machines are you working on? If you're programming, what are you programming in? If you're a scout, that's a lot of analytical skills and what you're doing for scouting, right? And your business team, let's not forget our business team. So you're looking for grants, right? You're writing grants, you're trying to attract new sponsors, you've got outreach that you're doing, fundraising, project management. There's so much that you're doing that applies to the real world and is transferable skills in getting your first job. It's also really important when you're building your resume for applying for college to outline all that as well. And if you're any kind of lead on your team as well, so leadership is important, whether it's a lead on a sub team or a leader of your full team, that's really important. And I cannot stress enough the importance, as both of Becca and Mason mentioned, internships and co-ops are key. So once you are in college, make sure that you take advantage of that, because the one time in your career that you're not going to be expected to have experience is going to be for internships and co-op. And the work that you're doing right now in FIRST Robotics can absolutely help you get that first internship or research or your co-op. But I will tell you, when you graduate, so Becca and I are in HR, when you graduate and you go for your first job, we're looking for 2 years of experience. For a lot of those entry-level positions, you need to get that experience while you're in college. So I can't stress that enough. And then also on your resume, put down some of the projects that you're doing, as well as more of your pertinent classes. So whatever classes would apply to your job or the major that you have in college, put those classes down. That's my advice.
Thank you, Deb. I think that's really excellent advice, especially because you talked about all these, I suppose, non-traditional roles that we might not think about when we think about a first team. But when I think of my first team, I think of everyone who's working on, the electronic side of things, but also business, also scouting, and how that applies to a job like Sarah's with data science. So I think that's really wonderful advice. Thank you. And Becca, how about you?
Yeah, Deb did a great job kind of outlining all of that. I think, she and Mason really highlighted the importance of being able to articulate the leadership and technical experience you've had. The only thing that I would add is as you're articulating all of your wonderful first related accomplishments, whether it's in a resume or in an interview, try not to use, or at the very least explain, any first terminology that you're using. I know that when you're kind of wrapped up in the world of first, oh yeah, chairman's gracious professionalism, like people know what that means kind of in this world. But if you go into an interview and talk about gracious professionalism, they will not know what you're talking about. If instead you said something about, being an inclusive and transparent leader, somebody who prioritizes quality in your work, being able to work really successfully and seamlessly across different functions and departments, like that is all easily understood by somebody who might be sitting across from you in an interview in a way that, this first specific terminology might not be. So just something to reflect on. And then I guess specifically in a resume, something that, jumps out, kind of touching on the J&J perspective, really. At a company like J&J, the what you do is just as important as how you do it. So the successful results that you've achieved in your work will definitely catch attention when it comes to kind of the resume review stage. But being able to speak to how you achieve those results in a really positive way is what will make a difference in an interview.
Thanks, Becca. That's so helpful. And I like that you mentioned the first lingo for sure, because although not everyone knows about gracious professionalism, I think everyone should know about gracious professionalism. But that's something, I think that's an advantage that first students have when we're applying to these jobs, because we're so well versed in all these really good core values that we've gained throughout the program. Now, I do have a couple other questions for our panelists today, but I would like to just remind our audience to please submit questions through chat. This is an incredible opportunity for you to ask really whatever you'd like to our wonderful panelists today, and we'd love to hear your questions. Now, I'd like to go to Sarah for my next question, and this is a little bit specific. I'm wondering about experience before education or education before experience. What's your opinion on that?
That's an interesting question. I think the two go hand in hand because in order to actually assimilate the learning that you've gained through your education, you have to practice it. And the way that practicing it happens is through experience. So just relying on my own example, I was doing my master's, my PhD, and I continued in the same field, industrial engineering. And I kept learning all these interesting statistical models, mathematics, advanced analytics, multivariate methods. And in my mind at that time, I wasn't sure how that would relate to a real world kind of scenario or a real world kind of problem. And having been in that research world for 6 years as I went through graduate school, it just seemed like, okay, this is interesting, but what am I going to do with it? So then when I got the experience to actually take that outside of a classroom, outside of college, and actually start solving real world problems, in my first job in industry, I worked for a seed company that is trying to help the world feed more people with less. And so being able to look at all the wealth of data that was at their disposal, from drone imagery to satellite imagery to different kinds of data that are collected through research, and bringing all that data together and applying all these now methods and models that I had been learning in class to try and come up with something very meaningful that translates to an action that a farmer can take on his field as he tries to adopt new ways of farming, having sensors in the field, having robots in the field, taking temperatures and looking at the moisture, all that technology that is pervading every sector of industry, and how data is the main driving force behind it. I wouldn't have realized that if I hadn't had the opportunity to take what I was learning in classroom and actually applying it within an industry context, not research, not college, and see how it actually translates into something meaningful for different industries and society. So the two go hand in hand. Yeah.
That's what I was just going to say. It seems like it's not like you can really choose one over the other. You really need both to have that very meaningful experience. And that sounds wonderful. Thank you for sharing. We actually have a question from the audience now, which I'm really excited to share with our panelists. It says, all of your jobs sound so amazing with 3 exclamation marks. Could you share your favorite moments during your time at J&J? And maybe I can go to Tina first to answer this question.
Okay, that is a great question, and not an easy one because I do have many, although that probably sounds cliche to say. So one that immediately comes to mind, and just maybe not the most standout, but the one that pops in my mind most memorable, is our CEO, Alex Swirsky, works at our corporate office in New Brunswick, New Jersey, and I had one role that I was also based there, and it was rumored that Alex every once in a while would come down to the cafeteria and join a random table for lunch. So that was always kind of something I'm like, I wonder if that'll ever happen to me. So one time, sure enough, I was sitting down to lunch with a group of 5 or 6 other people, almost nearing the end of our lunch, actually, and we had like a meeting in 15 minutes, but sure enough, who joins our table but Alex Swirsky. And he just sat down at the table and was just, his first thing he said, he says, so you're having lunch with the CEO, what do you want to know? And we all were like, okay. So all went around, asked a couple questions. He spent at least like 30-40 minutes with us having lunch. We skipped our meeting, but it was a good reason to. And that just stands out to me so much because I think it's remarkable. It's such a huge company like J&J that our CEO does things like that and, makes the time to sit and connect with the employees and hear about what we're doing and kind of maintaining that connection. So that really just stands out in my mind as being something super noteworthy and, helped me kind of feel even closer that, he and J&J cares about kind of the employees hearing what we're doing and making sure that, we all feel that we are valued. So that would be one of my standout moments.
I would definitely call that a memorable one. Wow, having lunch with your CEO just so casually, that sounds really wonderful. And how about I can go to maybe Mason next about one of your favorite moments in your J&J career.
Yeah, there's a lot to choose from. I've had a lot of fun working here on all the different projects, but for me, we've been working on a single robot for a couple of years now, and the first time it really came to life and we did a clinical lab with that robot was just extremely amazing because you have all these ideas, you put them on paper, you've tested a lot of theories, but seeing it all come together and the lights turn on and the software starts making it move, but actually being able to invite a surgeon in and have them operate the robot and be able to do a procedure and see that success of, hey, all these ideas are coming together. This is something that can be actually used out in the real world. It really starts to click, and then you get that feedback loop of being able to talk to the clinicians, the surgeons and the nurses who come through and test our hardware. It really does make you feel amazing, and it's so memorable because you're seeing what is the real world application of all this hard work that I'm putting in. It starts to give you that glimpse of what it's going to be like for patients who are getting this help out there in the field.
Thanks, Mason. What an extraordinary experience for sure. How about I'll go to Sarah next. What's one of your most memorable moments at J&J?
I think for me, it's actually something that is related to our credo, how Johnson & Johnson is very intentional about giving back to the community. And in my first year at the organization, we had a group activity where my team was able to paint murals that were going to go to the children's hospital. And so we organized it as a team building activity or exercise, and just being able to take the time away from work and meet other people across the organization, the senior VP and everyone that helps head the team that I work for, and having all of us sit across tables, painting and drawing things that was going to a good cause. For me, those are some of the memorable experiences, and being part of other drives like Smile, where I actually participated, volunteered some of my time, or doing a chili cooking competition in order to raise some funds for the SMILE program again. So it's things like that that really make it enjoyable for me to work at Johnson & Johnson and seeing how people are very eager to give back to the community.
That sounds wonderful. Sarah, would you mind speaking a bit more about the SMILE program? What is that for our viewers who might not be familiar with it?
So SMILE program is one in which Johnson & Johnson helps to do reconstructive surgery for children that have a problem with a palate, with the upper lip. So every year there's a set of surgeons that go on a mission trip or go some other part in the world, and they take resources from Johnson & Johnson to set up a makeshift hospital or in partnership with local hospitals to help provide those services to individuals that need that kind of reconstructive surgery and in essence help restore their smile. And I've seen stories of people that have participated in the program, and I think it would be something really interesting if I get an opportunity to be a part of it at some point during my career.
That's wonderful. I think that Johnson & Johnson is becoming a dream workplace for many of our attendees today. Now, I do have another question from the audience, and I think we've gotten ones from a few people that we're just combining together. So my question is, what sort of education, degree, or major should students look into who are interested in the sort of careers, albeit very diverse careers, that you've been speaking about? Maybe I'll go to Deb first about this.
So I think that any major in science, technology, engineering, or math will prepare you for any of these types of jobs. So I had said my degree was in psychology, which isn't really directly related to what I was doing in technology, but it is related to human resources, for example. So it's a good foundation for human resources. I got into HR, and then I moved into technology. So I would also say that it would be great if you do get science, technology, engineering, or math, that you even consider maybe a minor in business. So I think it's important also to hone your soft skills as well as those technology skills. So I think that any of the majors in that STEM area would prepare you for these type of careers.
Sounds great. How about Becca? What do you think about any sort of majors, education, degrees that would really prepare our attendees here well?
Yeah, so I, speaking at least for the roles that I've occupied, I can kind of, based on that experience, reflect on some of the backgrounds that might have been helpful. So as Deb mentioned, I'm currently in HR. A lot of folks that I work with have really diverse backgrounds. I think the function is becoming a lot more diverse. They really value people who have a background in the business or in an unrelated function, as I am kind of living proof. So as Ed mentioned, psychology backgrounds, I have psychology. I myself have an MBA. A lot of folks within HR kind of benefit from having a business background. And, again, diversity is kind of, beautiful within the HR function. From a quality and compliance perspective, I think specifically in my previous role working as a site compliance lead, having a background in like some sort of a degree in science or engineering really kind of sets you up with the tools that you would need to kind of think in a very process-oriented and continuous improvement way that would suit you well for a role in quality or compliance.
That sounds great. Thank you, Becca. And maybe I'll go to Mason next about any opinions that you have around any education that our students should be looking for.
Yeah, I got to agree with what everyone else has already said so far. There's so many different paths that you can take to get to the same place. We really do find people with all sorts of different types of degrees. Obviously, if you're going to go down more technical path, like a Bachelor of Science or something equivalent is going to make a big difference, but that doesn't mean it's the only way there. We have plenty of team members who compensate for maybe not having the Bachelor of Science, but through years of experience. They get them that same level of education. Ultimately, what we look for is the skills that you're developing. So like, I gotta give a reinforcement to the ideas of doing internships, doing co-ops, but also leveraging the the kind of extracurricular activities that might be on your campus to really build out those new skills. The people who develop those skills outside of the classroom typically do even better inside of the classroom because of that, because they're seeing the connection of like, oh, this is how you really apply the things that I'm learning. So, my recommendation really is, do what you love or what feels exciting to you for what you're learning in like education-wise in the classroom, but complement that with actually application of different things and not just technical. There's plenty of extracurriculars that are non-technical, but they're going to build really good skills that you can take forward with you.
That's really great advice. Thank you, Mason. I think we see that with Deb, for example, right? Starting out with something completely different than what she's doing now. And I think many of us on the panel today have very similar experiences there. Now, I think just drawing from what, Mason, you're just talking about, I'll be combining a couple of questions again, and these are really so great. Please keep the questions coming in. How do you find good internship opportunities? And then what do you do if you want to do something totally different from what you experienced in your internship? And I see Becca nodding along here, so maybe I'll go to Becca.
I was just active listening, but yeah, no, I think I think one of the beauties of an internship experience is it gives you a chance to try something on, sight unseen, to determine if you think it's a good fit for you. As much as it's helpful to kind of build your resume and kind of work towards a role that you ultimately want to get into, if you're not quite sure where you want to land, I think me being in R&D engineering helped me understand that that was not the path for me. So I directly lived that experience. So I think it's perfectly fine if you try an internship on for size, decide that it's not something you want. At least you then have eliminated a path that you've decided, yep, that is not something that I want to pursue in the future. In terms of finding good internship opportunities, I think the first place to start is internally reflecting on what are your areas of interest, what are the things that you feel super passionate about and get you excited, where do you think you want to kind of go in your future. And then once you've kind of narrowed down that field a little bit, doing research. I know, within, if you're sitting here on this call as a high school student or as a college student, there are resources within school that, provide career counseling and kind of help you find that direction and sort of narrow down the scope even further. So you can reflect on things like, okay, what are, companies that are known for a really great company culture? Maybe that's what I want to get exposed to during my internship experience in this specific area. I know it can be a little daunting to kind of start with a totally blank space, but by doing some of that reflection and consulting advice from people who are a lot more experienced in the area, that can kind of help narrow it down a little bit. And I think that might be the best way to approach it.
Thanks, Becca. And next I'll go to Deb, because Deb, I know that you're very well versed in this field, but you're also very well versed in the field of FIRST and what the experiences a lot of students will be bringing in as they apply to the industry. So what do you think about internship opportunities, Deb?
As I said before, internships are so important, and as Becca said, whatever you decide to do in an internship, whether it helps you decide what you don't want to do in the future or what you want to do in the future, you're constantly building your toolkit. So I always like to think about the experiences that you have, whether it's you're playing on a sports team, you've got somebody in your family that may be a doctor, so you're interested in that. You've got the first robotics experience. You've got all of the classes that you're taking. Everything that you do builds your toolkit. And one thing also, when you decide you have your major, you start to think through what you want to do when you grow up, that will change. So the reason why I don't have a degree in computer science is because when I was in high school, computer science was mainframe programming, which was not exciting for me, right? The world has changed so much since I was in high school and college. So I graduated college in 1989. So just to put into some perspective, the internet wasn't really born yet, or at least not to the public, till 1991. So between the time I graduated high school and college, there wasn't really a lot in computer science. And now think of all the amazing stuff that we can do now with technology and analytics and robotics. So as you're going through all of your experiences and you're understanding what you like and dislike, the world is evolving too. So jobs that it will exist when you graduate from college may not even exist now. So just find a direction and keep going towards that direction, and you're going to ebb and flow all throughout your career because new things are going to pop up. So whatever you choose, whatever you're doing right now, it is not a prison sentence. You will continue to grow and evolve and change. So whatever that major is your jumping off point, but you'll be building your experience and your journey throughout. So just keep moving forward. Think of what you want to do over the next 2 to 3 years.
Deb, have you considered becoming a motivational speaker for your next step of your career? Because I'm feeling a lot more reassured now about not really knowing what I'm doing after high school. So I think that's really wonderful advice. And maybe Tina, if you could wrap up this question, what would be your advice on finding good internship opportunities?
Yeah, well, definitely kind of piggybacking off of everything Becca and Deb already said. They covered a lot of great ground there. Maybe I'd say one other thing that hasn't been touched on before is kind of leveraging your network as well. You know, talking to your family, talking to friends, talking to mentors, anyone that you know that you value their opinion and you can help kind of use them as a soundboard to bounce off. Here's what I'm thinking, but I maybe not sure, and kind of getting their feedback. I think that's very helpful. I definitely leverage that a lot and continue to in the workforce, you know, leverage mentorships and whatnot to kind of talk through these type of decisions. So I would definitely kind of, yeah, it's a lot of success comes from who you know and really leveraging relationships. So yeah, that would be what I'd add there.
Great advice from all three of you. Thank you so much. Now, I think our next question really applies to a lot of our attendees today who are young women, or maybe they identify with a gender minority. And the question here is, if you could say one thing to a high school girl in STEM that wants to go into biomedical research, what would it be? And I suppose why as well, since I think these fields tend to be fairly male dominated. It can be very intimidating for young women for sure. But what advice would you have? I'll go to Sarah first, if that's all right.
One of the first things is what actually Tina just mentioned, being able to identify a mentor for yourself. Speaking from my own experience, one of the things that helped me to power through and get my PhD through several challenges was encouragement from my advisor. So my advisor during my PhD was also my mentor, and just hearing her encouragement every week and pushing me forward in the research, in the topics that I was looking at was such a big contribution to helping me get across to the finish line. So find a mentor, someone that you respect, that has been where you want to go, and lean in on them and just use them as a resource to help you propel your own path forward. Then the other thing is to find that self-confidence deep within. In this world these days, no matter what anyone else says, you yourself have to be sure of your skill set. So I find myself many times as a data scientist in audiences that are male dominated, that, you know, in my day-to-day work, and many times I have to raise my voice to participate in a conversation, or, you know, just try to use a little bit more oomph to be part of a story that is going on and not be quiet in the background. And and one of the things that helps me is to just know that I have the skill set, I have the ability, I have a PhD, I'm here on merit, and I'm qualified to be here just like everyone else across from the table. Therefore, I can speak up and I can contribute my ideas, and I expect to be heard in these conversations. So you have to dig deep inside yourself and just find that inner superwoman, Wonder Woman strength, and just be able to speak up and to see that you yourself deserve to be there. And so you just keep going on and looking for advice and ways of dealing with any challenge, being able to learn and learn from mistakes and grow from experiences, and just be able to get better, and don't give up. Just keep going until you reach the finish line. So those are some of the two things that really helped me, being sure of myself, digging deep inside, and then just relying on my mentors to help me get to the finish line.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I have to say that you're like a superwoman to me and to all the young women and girls who are watching this right now, truly. And you using your voice and telling us to use your voice is so powerful. And I think you've paved the way, and all the women here, and Mason as well. You've all paved the way for all these young people right now who are wanting to go into these fields, but are a little bit intimidated by the process. So thank you. And next, how about I go to Tina? What advice would you have?
Well, I will say that's tough to follow Sarah's response there. That was, I mean, perfect. I would echo everything she said. And I would maybe also just echo along with kind of that mentorship angle, you know, seek out opportunities or, you know, inspiration from other strong women and find motivation there too. You know, it's definitely a passion point of mine, you know, encouraging more of that gender diversity in these fields. I mentioned kind of at the start my involvement in Johnson & Johnson's WeSTEM program. So really it's a lot about just sparking that inspiration very early on and even just planting that seed of you know, these are things that you can pursue, even if maybe you feel like you can't, or you think, oh no, you know, this is a male dominated field or whatnot. Just, you know, ignore all of that and just kind of the advice would be to just go for it and try to, you know, yeah, leverage mentors, find inspiration in successful, strong women that you admire. And then, yeah, to echo Sarah, just kind of find that confidence within yourself that you can proceed.
Really, really great advice. And I keep hearing about this sense of mentorship that's been so powerful for both of you, Sarah and Tina. And I'd also like to touch on something else, which is called allyship. I think that male allyship for me as a young woman in FIRST has been really powerful for me. And I'm wondering if Mason, if you could speak to this and any advice that you would have, or perhaps any advice for any of our male students who are watching this today on how to really be allies, how to be mentors, and how to support their women and gender minority colleagues.
Yeah, you know, I think J&J has a lot of great approaches to this, and they put a lot of effort into kind of trying to change the viewpoint of the office. And you know, I think it really, for our office at least, has taken effect to the point where, you know, we view people as people and really look for, you know, what can you bring, you know, to the organization, and we're learning to value that and look in different ways. So to me, it really does feel like a changing landscape and a changing world, you know, actively. You know, as far as advice, like, you know, this young rock star has a dream already. Like, she's in high school, she knows what she wants to do. You got to hold on to that, right? And like push forward. There is nothing that can stop you from doing that. You know, we live in a world today where you can go out and you can become that biomedical researcher. It's going to be hard. It's not an easy field to get in because it's difficult, right? It's going to be challenging. It's going to be tough days in there, but you really got to believe in yourself and believe in your dream and hold on to that, and you'll be able to achieve it. Like, I really feel that it's becoming a much more approachable place where there's going to be less obstacles, but you still are going to have to push yourself and work really hard at it.
Thank you, Mason. I'm sure that young rock star there in our audience is feeling really inspired right now and just really great about themselves, hearing all of the support from all of you here. Now, I'd like to ask one more question. We've gotten so many excellent questions tonight, but only have time for one more live. Rest assured, though, that we have received all the questions that you've submitted, and we'll be sure to follow up. So my last question is, do you believe that Johnson & Johnson provides a good fusion between the engineering and medical fields? This is, of course, of particular interest to me as someone who is very much undecided about engineering or medicine and might go on to do both, but I'm sure that there are many attendees today in our audience who are thinking the same. Maybe I'll go to Deb first and then to Becca about this question.
And I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to repeat that last part. So
sure, of course. So the question is, do you believe that Johnson & Johnson provides a good fusion between the engineering and medical fields?
So I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that question in the fusion between the engineering and biomedical, because that's not my area. Maybe Sarah, can I throw it over to you to see if you can answer?
I can't speak to the entirety of engineering, but from a perspective of, let's say, data science and AI and some of the forward-looking things the organization is doing within the medical devices field, there's definitely going to be a lot more congruence between just being able to develop these data-powered or AI-powered capabilities across our surgical implants as much as can be done, and then being able to bridge that with obviously physicians who are currently the brain behind all the surgical operations, all the sort of diagnosis and treatment that a patient receives. But now with the data that we have, we're working with surgeons to try and understand what they need to be better, and then marry that together with a physical robotics and data-driven kind of solutions that we're developing, so that there's a bridge between the two. So from that perspective of engineering and data and helping a physician be more effective in doing his job, there is definitely going to be a bridge between the two, and pretty soon we'll be moving more into perhaps a medical technology kind of field.
Thank you, Sarah, for that answer. And I think it'd be good to go to Mason next about this question, since you're very much at the intersection of both engineering and medicine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a classically trained engineer. I started my career at J&J as an engineer. And often you find myself in a room, I've got, clinical people who know what the surgeons want inside. There'll often be a doctor in the room. There's a team of engineers, mechanical and electrical and software. And we're all talking about, what can we invent or build or refine or make better to really address the surgeon's need? And so we're, the engineers have to come up to speed on the medical side of it and catch up with the terminology and understand, how the human body works and how they do these procedures. And, the clinical folks, they have to come to speed on engineering of what's possible in the world and what can we do with technology. And so it's daily that I am marrying the two fields together, and it really just feels as one. And we start coining the phrase a lot more around the office called med tech. This is medicine and technology and the intersection of it, and that's really what we're working on. And I think J&J has got a huge med device wing that is completely dedicated to that. And one of the crazy things, I worked on spacecraft before this, and that was extremely detailed, but med devices too. The things we invent cannot fail. They have to be tested and thoroughly analyzed to work every single time as expected, because people's lives literally depend on those choices that we make. So it is very complex and detailed oriented engineering that we're doing.
Thanks so much, Mason. And unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for questions tonight. But I would like to extend a huge thank you to all our panelists today. This has been such an incredible experience for me and for all of our attendees today to learn more about Johnson & Johnson and everything that you do past the no-tear shampoo that I'm so familiar with. But there's so much more to Johnson & Johnson that I think we've all learned about today. And it's just been really inspiring for me personally to hear about all your experiences in very diverse roles, but how they really come together and how robotics is so important to all of them. So thank you all so much for being on our panel today. I really enjoyed and benefited from this experience. And I think that all of our attendees, whether they're students or alumni or mentors in FIRST, have also really learned a lot about Johnson & Johnson and are probably inspired to apply to jobs like yours someday. So thank you very much for your time. And I really appreciate all the advice and words of advice that you've given to us today. Thank you.
Thank you.